everyone, and welcome to the Alpha 8 podcast. I'm your host, Hermann Binek, and the co-founder of Alpha 8. We will discuss everything from emergency response initiatives to the intense battle against wildlife crimes. We will even get you into the thrilling chases of hunting down poachers with guns and so much more. So join me in these conversations where every story highlights the sheer determination and bravery of those making a real difference, those people on the ground. When lives are on the line, every second counts and every action matters. So, grab a seat, get comfy, and become a part of our mission. Hey, I'm Herman. I'm one of the creator of Alpha 8, and I actually have to take you back to how it was started because I grew up in a mountainous areas. It's like close to Salzburg, the Austrian mountains. And I grew up with my dad being the head of the mountain rescue in George and avalanche rescue team of Europe. So I basically grew up with helicopters all around me. We had the local 911 call to our house phone line. So I was conditioned that I will never answer the phone. If I answer the phone, I have to prepare for an emergency and I have to ask all those 7W questions and I have to write everything down and so on and so forth. So it was kind of like a big deal, right? You grow up, you come back from kindergarten, and the phone rings, and in the background, stress starts building up. And my mom was helping out there as well. She did a lot of non-profit organizations as well, and they all work for the Red Cross and doing a lot of stuff, a lot of work. And of course, when you grow up as a boy, you want to be always different than your dad. And then now later on, I realized that I'm actually exactly the same like my dad. Um, and having that said, I actually grew up, and of course, I was part of the Red Cross in Germany at that time, and I worked for the German Red Cross, and we did a lot of charitable work. But then you start traveling around the world for your work, and you gain a bigger perspective of what's really going on, and then you realize that it does not really make sense because I'm going back to the same places and there is no progress, right? I realized that maybe the process of things is wrong or how we help. And that's where we started with my colleagues, other paramedics and rescue specialists to do our own thing. We happen to be in different countries for our job in safety and security. And we realized that we can help as first responders because mostly we realized in a third world country, we have a better understanding of things or we are better trained because the government pushes much more money into that. So we try to help as a fellow medic, right? Hey, I'm your colleague. Let me help you with this. If you do this time or if you do it this way, then it is much better and you have a much greater outcome of that person being alive after a while. So we did that and we realized that everybody, meaning every rescuer, every medic, is so grateful and really wants to learn. They just want to have their tools ready and they want to help as best as possible, right? And now with us giving you that little tool or that knowledge, everybody was very happy. So we went forward and back and we went to different countries and we helped. And when we wanted to get better equipment to the guys or just new equipment or just equipment which is not expired, right? Equipment which is actually safe to use. And then we always had those issues with at the customs, who are you guys? Are you any kind of non-profit? Like, no, we're just, Herman, Bill, Bob, and Paul. And like, no, that doesn't work. Um, so we had a lot of problems there that we took that next step and that, you know what, then let's open up a non-profit so we can actually really do our help and our work. And that's how it started.
So it's really interesting when you speak about, you know, providing medical equipment that's like not expired, that's still usable, which I feel like you've seen it more often than not, where certain countries in need have received aid, but it's things that are completely useless to them in regards to equipment or even resources that they need. Like they drop off a ton of food or things that, we talk about it all the time about it's being a band-aid, but it's not something that's going to create sustainable, like to carry them through other hard seasons. So could you talk a little bit about Alpha Aid's approach in being a greater good multiplier, but also really instilling the thought of self-sustainability?
Our team and I, we have all worked for big nonprofits and we all realized that something is wrong. Sometimes we even think of why are other people working for big nonprofits are not thinking that way because they must see what we see. And that's where we said we need to and it's basically just like when you work and operate as a paramedic or a security or even a soldier, you have a certain objective. You need to reach your goal, and the goal needs to be sustainable, right? The goal needs to be there for a while. It cannot just waver. It, what we try to do is to make sense out of it, right? Is what does that person or that area really need? Do they need 20 tons of grains and rice? How do they actually do that, right? Let me just be with those people and see what they really have. I think we have to create a concept for every single emergency, for every single region wherever we go. And we have to sit together and we have to make a plan because we are not big. We are just, Herman, Bill, Bob, and Paul. So that's how it all started, and that's where we realized it's actually not that hard. If you think about a little bit, I can help with my expertise as a paramedic, with my equipment I have with me, and I leave that equipment to somebody who knows how to handle that equipment. So I have to train people, but I'm not there all the time, right? So if I'm going home, then what is that person doing? So we have to think of all of those things. So it needs to be, everybody needs to actually be able to operate independently. And that is our goal. And then I don't want to go down there and teach 5 people and then I help 5 people. No, I need to be able to multiply my effort so we actually have a chance to change something down there. Otherwise, that doesn't work, right? But I need to have those people going back to their independence as soon as possible. All around the world, you have, for example, paramedics and ambulance services, and they're doing their own thing in their own way, independently. And then some kind of emergency arises, and then they are completely overwhelmed. They are not independent anymore. They need help from the outside. And then the big organizations come in and they just drop off stuff because it's one of their line items. And what happens afterwards? That emergency goes away sooner or later because the locals work on it on their own. And sometimes they can use a little bit of the outside help from the big nonprofits. But this is wasted help. This is wasted time, money, management, everything. That's why we try to do it different, where we actually are with boots on the ground and we help in that way which is needed.
Clearly, there's big agencies and big nonprofit organizations that do incredible work. And there's something to be said about the ability for them being at that scale to be able to reach, there's like a bigger reach. Um, which, I feel like is such a big component of the reason we wanted to do a podcast like this, to talk about the stories and to kind of peel back the curtain of what it really looks like to be a nonprofit that's doing global work, who's partnering with other countries and really doing it in almost like a guerrilla approach, right? Like it's who it's how are you going to get people involved? It's picking up the phone and being like, "Hey, this person needs help." Could you share some of those stories where the ability to be the size that you're at now, where things move a lot quicker than, the big corporations or big, there's so much red tape to go through. It's like, give us, I guess, tell us a story about how quickly things can kind of go from problem to solution with Alpha Aid?
Yeah, we have lots of stories, so we can fill many podcast sessions about that. Um, One story is which is still in everybody's mind, the Ukrainian war as an example, right? And people, organizations, companies, everybody sponsors and keeps sponsoring, right? Last year we realized that with all those sponsors and with like medical aid and with paramedics getting flown in and say train tactical trauma care, and I've heard it right and left and everything, we thought, wow, actually they really take care of it. That's great. I think the bigger organizations are changing now. And then we hear from our colleagues, paramedics from the Ukraine, like an outcry and saying, well, we don't know what to do anymore because we don't have any transport to get real sick or injured people out of combat zones and out of Ukraine to, for example, Moldova or Poland. We do not have any transportation. And we were kind of like, we didn't really know. We were kind of like confused. Like, what do you mean, don't no transportation? Like, well, we need like an ambulance call or something. Like, I've heard it right and left in the media that there are 20 ambulance calls sponsored, 20 ambulance donated here, 50 ambulance calls. Like, what are you doing with all those? Is there some like what's really happening here? So once again, we started that. We realized what the problem really is. The donated ambulance cars are empty, old ambulance cars. Nobody from the big nonprofits is taking real money in their hands and sends a top model new ambulance car over there. Nobody does that. However, the paramedics are trained, European trained, if they have a trauma which they have to mobilize and go to the hospital with, they need all the medication and all the equipment in the modern ambulance cars from, not only IV sets, but from respirators and oxygen, all those kinds of things. And we realized that they don't have that. They urgently need that. So we went ahead and we flew to Europe and we got two brand new ambulance cars. We checked them out. We put everything in it, all the medications, everything they need. And we uh, got all the licenses done in no time because it's such a hard deal to drive an ambulance car across Europe because flying there would take longer because you have to go to customs and everything. So we basically took those cars and we drove them ourselves to the border of Ukraine and dropped them off with a team of paramedics who were suddenly like little kids. They ran into all the cars and they yelled, does your car have this? My car have that too. Oh my God, wow. And it's actually a full gas tank. Wow. And next day they went out and actually worked with those things. And that's how fast and how good it can be. That's exactly what they needed, and we gave it to them.
That's incredible. I feel too, there's so much power in speed. Instead of fine tuning things and making sure everything's perfect, it's kind of a really unique model in the fact where it's like, how can we train you to survive, to get through this emergency? But then it's also, okay, once the emergency is taken care of, how can we dial it back and then really refine our skills? How can we build upon emergency preparedness and kind of take that next step in, you know, when we leave, that this community is going to be able to stand on their own. What other countries has Alpha Aid provided assistance to? And because I know there's a lot of work in Namibia and the Philippines. Can you kind of touch on the different countries?
Yeah, so we do the emergency care and we train the rescuers in the Philippines. All over in the Philippines now, we have 4 big regions, which was really necessary because rescuers die there every once in a while, and there are disasters all the time in the Philippines. So that was kind of like a shock for us that people are so nonchalant about rescuers perishing. So we're having an ongoing project over there. We go there and help, and we also teach the rescuers how to survive, basically. In Namibia, we did the entire Southern Africa, where we evaluated the situation of not only protecting the wildlife, but also the sustainability of that entire environment, with tourism and with people going in, industry and building everything, and how um, the environment and the people can live with it. Why is there such a big gap there? And people are always very fast to say, well, the crooked government, or this is wrong, or that is wrong. That doesn't really help. I need to find a solution there. So we build a concept of how we can change things, and we basically wanna we created our model concept, which is the Alpha 8 farm, and we went around and let everybody play the devil's advocate, so to speak, and we could silence everybody. So it's now a proven system because it has started, and a framework or the first puzzle piece of how to change it to the better.
And I think that's such a good visual, like a puzzle piece, or, I know we've talked about it so many times. Like, how do we make this graphic of it's a drop? It's like that ripple effect where, you throw a stone in the water and then you see how it grows and how it touches and reaches different regions. Um, And it's amazing because I don't think I've ever been explained how nonprofits are organized or how they're structured. I always kind of had the concept of a giant corporation. It's a business, it's running a business, and there's so many moving parts. But at its core, and I think what makes Alpha Aid so unique is the simplicity and the transparency. Because there's also something to be said where it's like the more simple something is, the more simple somebody can understand it and wrap their mind around. There's nothing complicated to explain about it. So, we always joke about, yeah, it feels good to give money, it feels good to donate to a cause that's important to you, but really knowing where that money goes and what resources are being allocated to what cause. Could you kind of overview like the structure of how Alpha Aid's structured in that regard of donations in, what does overhead look like? What does travel look like?
Yeah, I think you're right that the big organizations are basically running like big companies. And I think they have to, in order to maintain themselves as such a big company. Um, from our side, I think we started in a different way because we all had our job and we just wanted to help and saw an opportunity. So we basically started it more as a club, right? To help. And um, we we paid our own airfare, everything ourselves. We took off from our jobs, right? So all the vacation time and everything to go somewhere. That's how it actually started. And luckily, I have my own business, so I can set a time aside. Uh, but we literally had people who just need to go on unpaid leave to help us. And um, then we go there and we help with on our own time, whatever we can get, whatever we can do, and then make a concept of, okay, what else is needed. And then we go ahead to certain people and say like, hey, I need that amount of X for that kind of equipment or for this kind of structure, so we can do A, B, C. And people are willing to help us then, because I'm not telling them, hey, can you give me amount X and I will deal with that. It's like, no, 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 I actually need this engine motor for this boat. And if you can get it to me, fine. If you want to give me the money or pay the invoice, fine. It is 100%, right? The thing costs $2,000. I need $2,000. The way to get it there, I will take care of that. I usually do that with my own money or whatever. So it's completely and 100% open. If I need something, I can give you an invoice of whatever we have purchased and paid. And I think that's the normal way, right? Why would I hide something? Or everybody can look into our books because there's nothing to hide. We are clearly doing certain things. Fine, good.
And I think that's such a cool concept. And it's something that I feel like you and the guys all share is that it's, well, what can we chip in and do? It's like full hands in, full hands out. It's not, oh, how do we individually benefit from it? What you benefit is like leaving the world a little bit better than how you found it.
Our big benefit is that I'm doing something meaningful. It actually really does help me and everybody around me. We are happy because we can do something which changes a person's life, a family's life, or a region's life or already. In the beginning, I wanted to define myself, who I am, and what I can do. And I didn't really know it when I was young, right? And then I realized doing certain things, I defined myself by basically eliminating what I'm not want to be, right? I'm not this, and I'm not that, and I'm not that. So I'm defining myself by the process of elimination, so to speak, right? And we are all at that point where we realize we don't want to do this and we don't want to do that. I have to do certain things to make a living. That's fine, but nobody really likes its own job 24/7, right? But going and taking time off and doing that, oh God, it helps me so much. And we are all happy and we all laugh, even if we are, like drenched in the water and freezing our asses off for 10 hours. But hey, we helped 5 guys from drowning. It is amazing. And that guy, maybe not even speaking our language or whatever, but you can see it in his face that he's happy and he is grateful. That's all you need. That's perfect. And that really makes sense. And that's what life is all about. Sometimes you have to give to somebody. It's a giving and taking, right?
Do you have a memorable story that really sticks out in your mind where you're like, yep, this is exactly what Alpha Aid's all about?
There are many really, really different ones, right? We last time in Namibia, we went into the wild and there was a big conservancy. They tried to locate rhinos, and there was a real threat of syndicate hunters. Um, Now at that point, people say, why didn't the government help? But that's a different story. I can tell you all about that as well.
Will you
Um,
tell us what syndicate hunters are, though, for people who don't know?
um, There are basically three different types of hunters. You have the subsistence hunter, the hunter who is hungry and needs to eat something. And those hunters are going in and they're trying to kill animals, mostly not even with a gun because they don't even have the money for ammunition, right? So they have snares and everything and they eat whatever they catch. And then you have those hunters, those poachers for profit. These are guys with rifles and they go and shoot as many animals as possible in a short period of time and get all the meat, which they then sell. So they actually make money with it as like a profitable endeavor. And then you have those trophy syndicate hunters for trophies, for ivory and for rhino horns, like those alternative and old ancient Chinese medicine or something, where you have rhino horns, you have ivory, you have to do certain things in a certain way. Those guys are professional crime syndicates. They are set up like crime syndicates for more and more time now. I think it's a percentage of more than 50%. They fund terrorist activities as well because it's easy for them to just, kill elephants and wildlife. And those guys are going in very professionally and they have a setup with a lawyer who would actually bail them out of jail and the one and the force. That's a whole different setup because there's a lot of money in it. Because right now, people have to understand um, a rhino horn usually a rhino has two horns, and the horns in total, two horns are probably like 6 to 8, maybe more kilograms, right? And rhino horn has double the value of cocaine as now. So it would everybody start thinking of, oh my God, this is a lot of money on that animal, right? Um, that's why everybody just goes wild. And even in third world countries, this is this is a lifetime of work for those people, right? Of course, they don't get it because the syndicates are all behind it, but that's how it goes. So one of the nicest parts is we could locate a bunch of rhinos. mom with her calf and everything, and we were actually completely out in the wild. I want to say like 3 or 4 hours driving away to the next post, and we we could locate them and we could stay with them, and that was one things which made me happy because we finally found them after days of work. Uh, this is a good moment where I think, okay, this rhino, this is safe now. We can take care of that one. There are many different ones, right? Where you help maybe a little kid how to survive, or a mom or something gives them back to the kids when they are lost somewhere on a mountain, or like in any kind of catastrophic event. There are really many, many little things. If you look into the eyes of somebody who you treated, and every nurse and paramedic who listened to that would completely agree with me. This is the best reward. If you really see a smile or those open eyes, this is all you need. And that's why you do that. As long as you have wildlife or even cattle, you have poachers. And it's usually always for money or for getting any kind of advantage, right? Look at all the old Western movies. It's basically cattle barons and cattle rustlers, right? Cattle rustlers are also the poachers when they kill them. Um, Poaching is everywhere. Usually you have the authorities who really take care of it very well. However, when it comes to numbers like rhino horn, double the price of cocaine. Then we go into area where the profit is so high that you have so many bad people making a lot of money that it's hard for the governments down there to function without taking care of the wildlife. And now they have to take care of anti-poaching as well, with so much money and power involved. It's really hard for everybody.
Could you explain to people who don't know what poaching is?
You would have to talk to Wikipedia, right? But as far as I'm trying to explain. So poaching, if you illegally hunt an animal, right? Um, the animals, for example, there are endangered animals like elephants and rhinos, right? Um, it's part of the wildlife in Africa, in Southern Africa, right? It's part of the community. But people then think, well, it's part of the natural resources. Why can you just not do that? Because they are endangered and they're not standing around on the side of the road and you can just shoot them up, right? You really have to go and look for them. And you do not have any kind of benefit than selling the horn to a syndicate or something, right? There is no, and then by the end of the day, there is still no benefit because rhino horn doesn't do anything. It's the same like your fingernails. It's keratin, right? It does not do anything. It does not help you medically or whatever. It's complete nonsense, right? It's just like fingernails. It grows and that's it. It looks cool because it's an enchanted animal, and that's why entire Asian world, they have some kind of weird stories about it, how that might would work or help. No, it doesn't. It's nonsense. People usually went to poach, and that's in the last 1,000 years, right? Everybody heard the story of Robin Hood, right? Robin Hood and his guys, and they were sentenced to death because they poached a king's deer, right? That's the same thing. The deer belonged to the king because the land belonged to the king. He was poaching because he was hungry, he was starving, he needed something to eat. That is poaching. This you can change because you can give those guys alternatives. So they don't poach. If you feed them and they have something to eat, they don't want to poach because it's a hell of a job to poach. It's not that easy. It's not like fun and games. Oh yeah, let's go out and poach. No, that's not what it is. It's a last resort.
You think about different regions of the world where they rely so heavily on tourism, or they rely so heavily on outside money coming in so that the communities can thrive. And you had mentioned people who hunt just for livelihood. They need it because they're hungry, they want to feed their families. Talk to us a little bit about how Alpha Aid is trying to turn that around so that there's livelihood in creating a sustainable future for themselves and their families. It's not just like, oh, you know what, stop poaching. It's like, what's the longer term solution?
Let's take the example of Southern Africa, where you have a lot of communities who barely can afford anything, right? They have water and they have barely electricity, and they have a household of like 5 or 6 kids where they need to feed everybody. Um, the dad needs to provide also protein and everything, and he maybe doesn't even have a job all the time, right? He's maybe a helper here and helper there. The kids need to go to school. When they don't go to school, you need to somehow take care of them. If something happens medically, they're getting sick or injured or whatever, they don't know what to do, because then you have to go to a doctor. The doctor needs money as well, so you have to basically save every dime for everything. So by explaining you what they have to do all day, I already telling you what could be the solution, right? You need to basically build a basic education system, a basic medical system, so they can actually settle down and have certain kind of prospects. And then you have to give them alternatives on how to make a little bit money on their own, right? So maybe invite them to work with tourists, right? Or with tourist outfits or something. What we did, for example, we gave out sewing machines so they can saw like little trinkets, handmade stuff from their own country, right? For the tourists. But what you don't want to do is, and that's what the big organizations do, is they just dump certain things so you can help. But it's not help because they just receive it. There is no real gratitude. You just take it and you condition those people to just take more and more and wait for the big organizations to come and do it again. And I think that's what they want, to keep the status quo. But what we did, for example, we said, well, that sewing machine costs you whatever, 1,000 local currency. I give it to you, but you have to buy it off of me, right? I give you a loan, so you can buy it off in the next whatever, 2 years or something, which we don't care, right? I just want them to make sure that they are still working on it and they are still keeping their independence. And from those 1,000, they give us whatever, two of the local currency a month or something. And even if it takes 2 or 10 years or something, we don't care. But you can see we help them build their own independence, and they start working, and they're all now making more money. And now we had a different problem, because now the mom at home made more money than the dad, right? And then we had that issue. Then it comes back to education and to family and to like old versus new, and that entire change. And we helped that as well, because we want to teach the dad something as well, right? Being a helper for a mechanic shop or something, just teaching them some other skills. And then everything is fine. And then you have bigger community where this family does that and the neighbor family does something else, and they merge together. And maybe we tell you a little bit about more how you can maybe plant your own things, right? So it goes into the agricultural side. And that is basically what our concept of the Alpha 8 form is. And I can talk about it because it does work. It's a perfect model.
No, I think it's so important too. There's such an aspect about not enabling people where it's like, oh, we're just going to throw things at you. You may or may not need it, but really kind of instilling that pride within them to take ownership of their future and feel like they have opportunities where they can change the current, right? It's like there's all these things happening. How do you then create the tools to navigate what the future looks like? Because I think after a while, it gets easy. You just give people things, or you appease line items, and check the boxes and things like that. But it's, have you really empowered these people to feel like they can do things on their own? And I feel like there's a lot of pride and a lot of, so much heritage too that goes into it, where it's like we want to keep that going. We want to celebrate that and support that. And I think Alpha Aid providing them things that are helping them kind of keep that heritage and tradition
I
going?
would say there are those old, almost ancient cultures. We work with the San people in Namibia, for example, which are really amazing, and they barely have a concept of our modern life, right? Usually they don't even have watches because they look at the sun. So they also then don't really know how old they are, right? um There that so many moons ago, and then they count like, yeah, he's between 34 and 36-ish, something like that. This is amazing, and they are not stupid. They just really live 100% from the land. The some people live, or bushmen, which live in a savannah and in a desert where nobody usually can survive. And it's not only about what they know about the plants, the environment, and the animals and how to survive. It's also like the the social structures of everything, how everything works in there, because you really need to be a family, and there's no one, I'm better than you and you are weaker than that, and there's no like, and we have to do this and that. There is no it's very simple. And those guys, or some people, are the happiest people. They always laugh, they're always funny. We have so much fun with them. It's really great, where I can learn a lot. And I still learn a lot of humility from them, and not only how to distinguish between certain plants or tracks or whatever, but also how to treat people the right way, the way they treat their own. It's really, really nice.
When we first talked about Alpha Aid, you're like, oh, actually do two things. It's emergency preparedness and medical response and EMT training, but it's also the animal conservation and the wildlife protection side. So I'm like, whoa, how are these related? And I remember you saying, of course they're related, like human and people. So was that something from the inception? Like you knew you always wanted to have the animal component plus the human component, or is that something that gradually evolved over time?
We started realizing that it is all the same, that it is all one concept. Or simply put, you have a car accident on the road, and you help a person with like an open fracture or something, and there's blood splattering, and you do the job, and you get into the hospital and fine, great. And 5 hours later, you see an accident where the only thing which is left is a calf or a bull on the side on the road with a broken leg, screaming just like the other person as well. Why would I not help, right? So I help that animal which suffers the same like I would do with a human, right? Of course, there are nuances where you cannot help, or you should not help, or you have to make priorities, of course. But then you also realize that we are in one synergy. That's what it is. And those people, as an example, in Southern Africa, they live with the animals and everything side by side on a daily basis. This is part of life. And I can only help to change if I change that entire environment. And that's why a lot of nonprofits, a lot of bigger nonprofits are doing the same thing over and over for years and for decades, and they will not succeed because they're only trying to fix one thing. There's always the anti-poaching. Yes, we have to hunt the poachers, and let's go in there with guns and maybe an entire platoon of soldiers. It doesn't really hurt, but it doesn't help it as well, right? Because you have different poachers for different reasons. You have to address all of those things. And also in different regions, different rules apply. The same with the medical aid, right? I've seen it myself that there are containers full of equipment for rescuers and medics being down pushed to certain countries, and 5 years later, they are still unopened because they don't even know how to deal with those things. They don't even know how to open it and how to work with them, because sometimes it's not even in the same language. They're sending ambulance calls to third world countries, and like, no, we don't do that anymore because we came back after 5 months, and they were standing in the same yard, but they say screwed off all the tires. And I said, what do you actually expect? If I send you from whatever, a country where you don't even can read the language, send you new equipment, and they say, well, thank you, here, bye, take it. What are you gonna do? You cannot use it. The only thing you can use it, for example, is the tires. And they're like, well, before I don't use anything, I just use the tires. That's it. It's not malicious. It's not bad. But people immediately look down on those people like, ah, see, all they're doing is like stealing the tires. They're all thieves. We don't want to help them. No, it's just you guys have no concept of understanding what's really happening. All you want to do is you want to check marks a line item so you can tap each other on the shoulder and you buy a new whatever BMW or something. And that's what makes us mad. And that can actually change because all those big guys are doing is maintaining their status quo. We're getting a lot of general donations to do our thing. Whatever happens over there, I don't really care that much. They will be all for okay, they will be fine. They just need to figure it out. I give them whatever, 100 sonography thingies or X-ray or whatever, something. They just have to figure out how to use it. So come on, they should not be that dumb. I've heard that with my own life. Like, really? But you realize it's not even in their same language. You cannot plug it in because it's a different electric wire and something. It's like, you guys have actually thought about that? If I have my own company, in a normal for-profit company, sooner or later, those guys would get fired or demoted because they're doing a piss poor job. That pisses me off in a.
That's why the mission behind Alpha 8 is so powerful, is because it's built from a place of frustration and necessity also. Because it's true. It's the difference between, I mean, hello, you came from a background of the German Red Cross. Like, it's the difference between pairing up with an agency versus it's not easy starting your own agency. It's not easy, let alone starting your own nonprofit, because there's so much information sharing and knowledge that needs to be digested before somebody can sign on to the, like, oh, okay, I know like where my donations are going or where my efforts are going towards. So that being said, creating something because you're so passionate about it and seeing holes in the system, like not being able to, being frustrated enough to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. Nobody else is doing it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to call my guys. We're going to do it.
I think you're completely right. And we started with working for big nonprofits, right? For example, I started in my parents for the German Red Cross, and I had some fiery arguments with them over the last years, right? That's why we're doing that. And now I I try to let them see the holes of their own proceedings and what they're really doing. And now they're really open to it, and they realize, well, we can't make what you do, but you know what? We can actually help you. And we just formed a partnership with the Bavarian part of the Red Cross so that if we need trainings facilities, they will help us and give us that. So that's actually already very nice. So some nonprofits are realizing that we are basically the next step, or we are basically the fine-tuned element, right? Or even for other parts, there are I don't want to name nonprofits, but there are nonprofits which send out doctors, right? And they go over borders and do all their things. But they can only do that if a contact, a hospital, and all of that stuff is already established, right? We are basically those guys who makes that happen. We are going there and we tell everybody, you need a different setup. You need to do ABC. How many local nurses do you have? How can we teach the local nurses, right? Do you have EMTs? Let me see what you can do. Oh, we have to do this and we have to do that. You don't have the right equipment to drive from A to B. We have to do all that. When that is all established, other nonprofits actually can go in and train and help and support much, much better and more precise.
How do you go about adding people to your team? How did that grow?
Somehow by accident, where we work with people in a certain area, and somebody who helps, either from the government or local government, something, hey, what are you guys doing? Explain, hey, I can help you. It's always to find that guy with the heart on the right spot. I'm getting a lot of applications of, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to help you here and that. How do I get paid? And who pays for my trip? And who does this and who does that? For me, that's like already that big sign of like, wait a minute, is your heart on the right place, or are you just trying to find some fun in your retirement or something? I'm not 100% sure, right? So we had people where we went to Iceland, great country, first world country. We worked with the mountain rescue because they're really not that good. And people from the U.S. Embassy helped us, and one of those guys from the embassy is now helping us as well because he also has the heart on the right spot. So that's how you get together. And of course, we always have people from the side when we were in Namibia who called us and that, hey, I want to help too. Okay, fine, that's great.
It really is being that greater good multiplier. It's tapping your friend or tapping somebody on the shoulder and be like, hey, you should be a part of this organization. Or you, at least at bare minimum, should be aware of the efforts that are happening.
We helped with those COVID tests when the pandemic was. So we went out all around Los Angeles and did free COVID tests.
Got it.
Until I did it on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day until midnight. And a lot of people needed that. That was also something where it was kind of like heartbreaking and this is maybe one of those stories where you can really see the difference between Alpha 8 and everybody else. During the pandemic, on the big holidays, Christmas Eve, we went all around Los Angeles and we offered real PCR tests, and a lot of people came, and then you are working with those people, with the real workers, right? And there were stories where we found people who are positive, right? And they were crying out loud, said, no, that cannot happen. What can I do? I need to work, and you need to stay at home. If I'm at home, I cannot earn enough money. I need to work. So then you start to understanding why certain things happen, right? Why there is a certain dynamic of certain things. Why a lot of people then go to work sick and maybe then infect other people because they need to, because they're running from paycheck to paycheck and they need to have their money, right? And we were really exhausted because there were more and more people. It just didn't stop anymore. Sorry, I'm up for like 20 hours and I gotta sleep a little bit, but I come back tomorrow in the morning, and you have the same guys who come back in the morning and wait for you. And this is great when you help somebody, and it does not matter money for and back. No, nobody cares. That guy comes back and he says thank you 3 or 4 times, and he comes back and says thank you again. This is very helpful, and this is something where we made that difference because we are right there. It happens. We are with normal people who need help, who cannot help. We did not do it in Bel Air, right, where the private doctor can come 24/7, or even a helicopter, a private one. No, we needed to help those people who didn't have any other opportunities and possibilities, so we helped those guys. Very important because we are new, we need to spread the word. Everybody should talk about Alpha 8 and realize that Alpha 8 is something special, something different, which actually helps. The second thing is, if you want to help with your time or everything, everybody can help in a different way. It's not that I only need paramedics and nurses, everybody can help. We need people who can do fundraisers, people who have a couple of friends, like 20, 50, 100, who can organize something for us. We need people who can write beautiful letters. We can use literally everybody who wants to help. We can give a job to help, because you just need to have your heart in the right spot. You can help whatever you want to do. Anybody can help. Reach out to us on website, on all our social medias. We are very easily approachable.
What's an easy thing that people can do on their own to be a greater good multiplier?
Philosophically, have a little bit more of self-awareness and don't think about yourself all the time. Think who you are and don't do something which is against your soul and your nature, right? Feel that something can be done with your help. That can be on a daily basis. Don't go through your life without any kind of awareness, right? And I think it makes life better and more enjoyable if you active sometimes help somebody. Example of like helping an old man cross the street. This is something pretty good. You should try it every once in a while. Find an old man or an old granny and help her cross the street, and you will realize that was actually a cool thing. And then you go from there and you explore yourself, whatever you can do. Help people. There are people need help. We are not born to be all alone here in that world, right? It's communities.
Thanks for tuning in to the Alpha Aid podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating and review. Your support helps us reach more people and spread the Alpha Aid message. Want to be a greater good multiplier? Visit alphaaid.org to learn more and start making a difference today. Until next time, stay safe and stay inspired.